Okay, hang on just a sec. I got a rugby ball stuck to my hand here. I just need to get rid of it with my foot. Just hang on. Okay, that's grand. Now, a bit later than usual, it's time to start harping on rugby. Hi, it's Jeff Pagano here, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby. Now, regular listeners will have spotted our pod posting a little bit later this week. We had some live stuff going on, but very grateful to both contributors, Connor Quinn, who's earning his 59th Harpin cap, and Cian Rugby Kino Muller, who's earning his 36th, as they took the time on Monday to get a short and wrap pod recording done. So without any further ado, here's some Harpin on the match timeline. Now, I always slag off Galway for being windy, but to be fair, the whole country experienced it last weekend. Still, on the night of the match, it was Connacht who won the toss and chose to play into the wind in the first half, and it was Kieran Frawley getting the match underway, Connor.
Yeah, getting the match underway and kicking it straight down the pitch and into touch thanks to the wind. I think the two things that for me summarize how this game went, one is the wind and how well we played with the wind. Versus how well Connacht were playing against it. You could see it time after time. Murphy trying to kick the ball clear and the ball just getting caught by the wind and blowing back into them or blowing off into touch far shorter than he would have liked and not getting the real benefit out of it. I think the other big factor for me was Leinster's defence. I think particularly in the first half, I could see what was going on. And there's moments where you get the Connacht crowd cheering because the Connacht players made 15 metres, but it's only a net gain of about 3 because every impact we're shoving them back, or even just stopping them where they are and forcing them to play a deeper pass to try and find some space. So by the time they ended up making those metres, they've had to sacrifice them first to actually get the benefit of them. And I think for me, those are the two big things that impacted how this match was played and more importantly, how the match was won. I think looking at the tries we scored, our first one, it's off, it leads from a poor line out where as Connors tries to pass it to Osborne, I think he makes a meal of the pass. I don't know what went wrong at all. And maybe it was just the wind, but it catches badly and we end up with a scrum. And that's the first time we really saw Connacht trying to test that defence, as I was saying, which just, it wasn't giving them any room. And when you can't make yards running through players or running at players, you've got to kick. And when we kicked, Hugo took it beautifully, cleanly, and off the next phase, you've got Gibson Park to RG Snyman and his pass out the back to Osborne that gets us breaking through and downfield, and an inside pass to Jamison Gibson Park, who again is on a brilliant line. And I don't know how many times one of us has said that on the podcast over the last number of weeks. He just runs incredibly good supporting lines and running lines. And look, it's a few phases before we get a penalty. And unfortunately, he doesn't manage to make the try work, but we get the penalty. It goes into the corner, and then it's just a little bit of patience before, from the big boys taking hits before a little pass, and Osborne steps inside and past a couple of defenders, and now we're 5-0 up. We're only we're even 7 minutes in at that stage, and Frawley kicks the conversion, and it's as a 7-0 for us. And I think as good as our defence was, it was great to see that in our attack, and this one's a good example, we had threats everywhere. Fellas who wanted to run the ball, people who are saying, oh, I can see a bit of space in front of me. Let's see what happens, knowing that they've got the support coming in from rucks and players making the effort to get there and get over a ruck if they get tackled. So it's nice to see that creativity, and it's nice to see so many players who really wanted to try, wanted to put the effort in. We saw some really good carries from Ringrose, Osborne with plenty of work done over the course of the match. Keenan running from deep. So yeah, to get that first try, I think was quite a fair reward for where we'd been at. And even then, when you look at our second try, and that comes from, a line out happens, and rather than having any space, we get a crossfield kick that goes to Max Deegan, of all people, out on the far wing. And you're going, what's he doing over there? And the number of times you see him pop up out on that wing, it's clearly something planned. So again, another player who's got himself in space and looking for opportunities and looking to be an attacking threat the whole time. And it was great that we'd so many players who were doing that throughout the game. As that ball comes out to him, it doesn't quite make it to him, and bounces funny and then gets knocked into touch. And then again, we've got another line out. And again, it's about patience. It's about pulling defenders. It's about sucking enough players into midfield that when eventually it gets out to Liam Turner, he's got plenty of space to get over. The downside of this try is that in the build-up, we've an injury to Kieran Frawley. I immediately blamed the 4G pitch. Now, I know a couple of other people on our own chat were saying, well, he's been hit kind of funny and he's landed kind of funny. So it mightn't be entirely that, but I think a 4G pitch doesn't give the same way a real pitch does. And the impacts, you're expecting your studs to go a certain distance, particularly on that kind of a night, and then they don't. So I don't know, is it how he got hit, or is it how he landed, or has the 4G pitch got an impact on it? It's a question for those who are probably better informed than I am and have more experience. But I know from my own experience on a 4G pitch, we saw more injuries playing on those than we did on grass. So that's just my 2 cents worth. I think the impact of Frawley coming on, again, I think we say, again, there's another thing we say every week. It's no disrespect to Ross Byrne, but he's not the same kind of player. So it means that on only 17 minutes, the game plan has to shift a little bit. And it's a long time then before we get to another score. Ross's impact on the next score, I think, is one that should be commented on, because in the build up to Connacht getting their try, there's a point where I think it was a Cordero comes running at Ross on the wing, and he doesn't do enough for me at all. He doesn't do enough to stop him. He doesn't do enough to slow him down. He doesn't make a proper tackle attempt. And the two players who are in field are expecting him to make that tackle. So when he kind of bounces off Ross and finds himself with room to burst through, that's a big question mark for me. And I think it's something that to get the most out of Ross as a player, he still needs to be able to fit all the systems. It can't just be that, okay, we change things because Ross attacks differently. We shouldn't have to change anything because Ross defends differently. So I would have liked to see that tackle being made, because in not making that tackle, we get in midfield, a couple of phases later, a big break from Ioane, who makes plenty of meters. And we get further downfield for the Connacht team, and a position where Will Connors is going for a jackal, but has been deemed to have his hands on the floor first. So they've got themselves a penalty in a very kickable position, but they go straight for the corner. And then it's just line out, maul, phases, and eventually the try. And they're tails up at that stage, making those meters, getting those yards that they got, gave them the enthusiasm to go looking for to go looking for space, to go looking for a try. Ioane, for all his good run up the middle, didn't have a great kick to try and convert. So we get to 5 points to 14 at that stage, and it's about 35 minutes. And you're kind of thinking, okay, let's just see out the half, and that should be enough. I think the decision not to just see out the half, the decision to go looking for the opportunities, again, it's really, really positive to see. It's great to see an attacking Leinster team that, for all the good I'm talking about their defence, to see the attack going forward like that and really putting in the effort. And we get a penalty off a scrum that goes into the corner. Again, it's line out, it's maul. But when we go to the phases, Gibson Park, we can't say enough good about him. And I think, when we look at who do you keep and who do you not keep when you've got to let players go and when players are moving out of the system. And of course, we've got Murphy, who's gone to Connacht and has been playing against us and is completely overshadowed by how well Gibson Park plays. But in this particular build-up, as Gibson Park goes for the ball, I don't know whose foot it is that knocks it. And thankfully knocks it backwards. So we're not being called for that. And R.G. Snyman's just kind of standing there going, oh, look, there's a ball. And has a lovely pirouette around the outside of, Buckley coming at him to try and make the tackle as he pirouettes around and dives past two other Connacht players who were kind of standing there going, wait, what's happened here? And had a lovely little try celebration, that implication that the ball just wants to stick to his hands the whole time. But to see him get over for another try, it was absolutely great. And Ross used the time very cleverly to not convert straight away and give a chance for the restart, but instead use the full time allowed so that by the time he does kick the conversion over, it's now Connacht 5, Leinster 21, and we're going into the sheds for half time.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say is that any other team on any other day in any other rugby situation, I mean, if it's windy, wind's definitely a factor, you win the toss. It does make sense to play with it in the second half. And you know what I mean? But that's against literally any other team probably on the planet right now, except this particular Leinster, given the way we've done the last couple of weeks. I'm not saying they made the wrong decision. I think any team would make it, but this is a Leinster team that we're picking full strength, pretty much full strength sides for this time of year, and that's focused on getting that early lead and getting the tries. The tries on the board in the first half, and they were under the cosh for the whole half. They just couldn't get out of the 22 for love nor money. And
there was one point where the possession stats weren't, there was reasonable parity in them, but the territory stat was something like 95%. In Leinster's favour, which is phenomenal at any point in a game that isn't the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, it was just it was a lot of pressure. I mean, but like you say, they did come and get a try themselves. Like there was I looked at it a second time. I thought Will Connors might have had a jackal just ahead of that, but that's possibly nitpicking, whatever. But to get that try right at the end was kind of crucial. As you say, the halftime score was Connacht 5, Leinster 21. So Leinster's task after the break was, well, one of them anyway, was to maybe get a couple more points after the break than the previous week,
Yeah, we needed to start working towards that 80-minute performance we haven't seen yet this season, and they honestly, I think they did that. Kind of kicked off that second half with that sizable wind in their favour. Conceded an early penalty with a great turnover by Will Connors. Kind of allowed Leinster to keep that pressure they built up in the first half of the game. Next thing you know, they're securing the bonus point through a Max Deegan try. It started off with a maul with really nice forward momentum, followed by a series of relentless attacking phases in Connacht's 22. Build-up featured contributions from Snyman, whose name I'm probably going to mention a couple of times today, and Ross. Snyman initiated the move with powerful carry and an offload that kept the attack alive. Again, Snyman's offloading is probably something we're going to mention a good few times as well today. Gibson Park directed it quite effectively. Nice quick recycles, stretching Connacht's defence. Byrne fired a wide pass to Deegan, who scooped it up. Really difficult one to scoop up and did a lot of work, finished it off, powered through a tackle and crossed the line. Did Byrne mean to throw that skip pass as a kind of a low dam buster bounce? I don't know, but it worked anyway. The conversion then, unfortunately, was pushed wide by that sizable wind, but that was Leinster lead 26-5. After that, Leinster continued in the same form, pushing forward, despite the wind being against them. broke the Connacht line. There was a break by Snyman in hour 22, who got an offload out to Gus McCarthy, who made 50 metres down the field. Very impressive from a young hooker, very much in the vein of hookers we seem to be producing at the moment. It looked almost certain to be to get in for a try, except for a massive tackle by Aki on Andrew Osborne. God love him. You could see his soul leaving his body. On replay, the hit, it was legal, but it was a little bit higher than you'd like with this small margin for error there, and that was a bit of a worry coming up to the autumn internationals. The last thing we need is having to buy biscuits for the cycling committee. Now, Connacht weren't wilting though at all. They were putting Leinster under pressure with key tackles from players like Paul Boyle and Dylan Tierney-Martin. Both had good showings. They launched attacks through Bundy, always good for a carry, and Boyle again, consistently gaining yards at that point. They managed 15 attacking phases at that point, which is pretty persistent. But Leinster's defence, as it was pretty much all day, certainly for the first hour, was very firm. And Boyle got held up over the try line. You're not going to put a ball down through Andrew Porter. It's just not going to happen. After that, Connacht did manage to get a score. There was a series of kicks, which was honestly, I think, underutilized by Connacht in this, given how heavy the wind was against us. They didn't pressure us as much as they could have. Boniaki made a big carry off of the line out just outside our 22, and Carl Ford broke through tackles from Osborne and Snyman to score under the posts. Joshua nailed the conversion then, so it was 26-12. So, when Connacht's game plan works, it's really nice to look at, and it's very effective, but it's a matter of actually getting it to work. As I said, I think they could have used the kicking game better. Unfortunately, Ione's kicking is not where it needs to be just yet. He's a real threat with the ball in hand, but work to be done there yet, and maybe he needs to adjust a little bit to the Connacht environment, let's say. But just as Connacht rallied like that, Leinster struck back again. Ross Byrne delivered a really nicely placed restart, contested by Andrew Osborne, who had a really good showing. Leapt up, claimed that ball, spun away, and sprinted to score. One phase move. Looks uncannily similar to one that was done by a man in green for the men in green.
I mean, even when he's not playing, he manages to get his name brought up. That's the player he is. But we haven't even said it, but everybody knows who we're talking about.
Not even about a haircut this time or a tattoo. So Byrne got that conversion then, pushing the score out to 33-12. After that, this kind of here and there for a couple of minutes, James Gibson Park nearly got a intercept, unfortunately knocked on. Bundy gave him a lovely little hug as the play was called back for advantage, which is a nice little moment to see. There's definitely still friendships on the pitch, even in the midst of pretty heavy duty interprovincial combat. And it was just after that Leinster brought on fresh legs. Fintan Gunn for Gibson Park and Hugh Cooney for Turner. Connacht kept on working. They were really diligent and tireless, attacking even from deep. Dylan Tierney-Martin had a couple of good carries, and Paul Boyle again as well. But again, Leinster's defensive scramble was pretty good. I know they were talking about the missed tackle stats on the commentary, but it's a bit misleading with this defensive format, so I wouldn't place too much credence in those. Leinster scrum was dominant at this point. Pretty much was throughout the second half, and it remained so throughout until the end. They missed, I think the ref missed a deliberate triple of four on Andrew Osborne. Unfortunately, these things happen though, especially with such a fairly fractious match. So we kind of let that go. Late in the game, Connacht created two pretty promising opportunities. Bolton and O'Connor broke the line in the 76th minute, I think. But Murray knocked on just less than 5 meters out from the line. 2 minutes later, Connacht launched another sweeping attack down the right, but Murray again knocked on under pressure. So that Leinster scramble defence really doing its job, ensuring they couldn't add to their tally. And that was pretty much it. That was full time 33-12, another 5 point bonus victory.
Yeah, I mean, last week David Cordio opined that there was a kind of a pattern emerging with Leinster's performances, because the Munster match was so similar in the way it went to Benetton, and here it goes happening again. So you don't know. I mean, it's like there's only so much you can choreograph the way a scoreline goes in rugby, but Leinster have managed it pretty well the last few weeks. But one thing I'll say for Connacht, I mean, it was, like you say, they did have some good performances. I think your man Owani does need to settle in. He's really good in broken play. The thing is, you don't seem to get a lot of that the way Leinster were defending. But if you do give him half a sniff, he does make something of it. And the other thing I noticed is, like, the crowd it's at 6,000. That's they would have sold every 8 inch of real estate they could have gotten a body into for that particular fixture. And when you see that, and that there's a stand still to go in there, and there's work still to be done there, that things are going to look, that stadium is going to be hopping when that's finished. So it's looking good out in Galway. So hopefully, I keep saying every year, that's the one trip I love the most. And every year something's always coming up on that weekend, but hopefully maybe this time next season we'll be going down in the full Dexcom Stadium, which we'll be still calling the sports ground. But listen, so another good win for Leinster, as you say, and the final score was Connacht 12, Leinster 33. Okay, so now it's time for some quick final thoughts, starting with Conor.
I think it's great to see, as I said earlier, solid defense, really working hard, making Connacht have to earn every meter, and I think that's really positive. I think you go through 7 changes in your starting team and still manage to keep some sense of cohesion and some sense of togetherness. I think Connacht were definitely better in the second half, and it forced us to be better in the second half than we have been in the last couple of weeks. And I think it's been good to see that. It's been good to see that we can play for 80 minutes and still be making a difference towards the end of the match as well. So I think that's really positive. Yes, of course, there's going to be work-ons, but any time where you can introduce 2 new caps and still get good mileage out of your starting hooker, who's not had a very many caps on his own, and to do as well as he did, and then to have a new cap come on for his first at hooker, and all based on injuries. This isn't a thing of, sure, everybody's missing players, it's the Six Nations. So to see that is, for me, really, really positive. And I think it looks good for us going forward for our next game.
Okay, and now for Keno's final thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to touch on 2 notable performances in my head. The first is an obvious one. It's Rudolphus RK Sneeman, player of the match. His all-around impact in this game was stunning. He set up that Liam Turner try with a well-timed offload. I think one of his offloads was possibly less than a 50-50, but to be honest, he finds the mark with them so often, you'd be very slow to criticize him for trying it on. In the line-out, he was key as well, constantly stealing tackles. Like, he stole 3 in that game. Leinster are top of the table, I think, for stolen line-outs at this point in the season, and you can kind of see, even when he's maybe not on the pitch, I think he's influenced the way we're approaching the defensive line-out now. So physical in the carry as well. 12 carries for 45 meters, just put Leinster on the front foot. And contributions to Max Deegan's try as well. Like, he scores 1, assists on 2, and in the tackle, he's a big physical dude. He really was disrupting Connacht's attacking phases. In the 61st minute, his pressure forced that knock-on from Connacht, which denied them a clear scoring opportunity. It's like his ability to read in the tight as well as in the loose is just, he's some fella for one fella. I think he's just signing the season for across the provinces. The one other performance then that I wanted to note, which I think is important to do when they happen, is Owen Cross. I thought he had an excellent performance. He was consistent. He was a good communicator throughout. He had a great command of the breakdown. He was strict both sides in terms of rolling away and offside, and he really contributed to the flow of the match. A few contentious moments, particularly around that potential high tackle, but he really maintained a very fair approach. Again, clear communication, both with his assistant referees and then to the players. His decision to let that Bundyaki tackle on Andrew Osborne's stand, no penalty, was well supported in the replay. So, it's hard to criticize. Yes, there were a few mistakes across the match, but referees are human. I thought he had an excellent performance, and I look forward to following his refereeing career.
Well, that's brilliant, lads. Many thanks to Conor and Keno for taking the extra time to record. It's a pleasure as always, and hope to have you both on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, guys. Good to chat.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.
As for our next batch of Harpin, keep an eye on our YouTube channel during the week for our latest bonus chat, and also our 80 plus column, which should post on Wednesday. After that, we'll be turning our attention to our return to the Aviva Stadium next weekend. So be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.